Nomad Podcast.
What's it like to sell all your belongings and collapse everything you own into just 15 items that fit into a small backpack? And then to hit the road for 3.5 years, visit 80 countries, all while writing a best-selling novel on travel. This is just one of the many amazing adventures of Andrew Hyde. I had a chance recently to catch up with Andrew and ask him questions about topics like minimalism, sustainability, blockchain, sharing economy, and how to adopt a more Zen-like attitude towards travel. Andrew has a very impressive, even what I would say aggressive bucket list. And he has more items in his completed column than I even have on my total bucket list. So to give you an example, last year Andrew cycled across the entire United States just to see if he could do it, and he did it. I've known Andrew for 12 years now, and every time we have a conversation, I find myself rethinking fundamental assumptions, questioning constructs that I thought were fully baked, and coming away with these little epiphanies and aha moments, which is why I'm extremely stoked to now share with you my conversation with Andrew Hyde. So without further ado, here is that conversation. Nomad Podcast is supported in part by Nomad Prep, an online academy that teaches you everything you need to know to take your job on the road and crush it abroad. Enroll today at nomadprep.com/podcast and get your first 4 days of training completely free. Nomad Prep, take your job on the road and take on the world. All right. Welcome, Andrew Hyde, to the Nomad Podcast.
Yay. Welcome. Everybody else, not you. I can't welcome you to your own podcast.
You can welcome me to my own podcast.
What's up?
All right, so let me just kind of paint the picture here. Andrew has been to 80 countries. Is that right? 80?
Yep.
So that's about 2 times the most that anyone I've interviewed has been to. So you hold the record there. I think Trevor was 44. So twice the number of countries there. You're founder of Startup Weekend, moderator of TEDx Boulder, moderator of Startup Week Boulder, Ignite Boulder, author of a best-selling travel book that is aptly named This Book is About Travel. And you've been interviewed by this laundry list of New York Times, NBC World News, ABC Radio, Washington Post, Boing Boing, Boston Globe, Inc. Magazine, Entrepreneur Magazine. Like the list, it's too long to read. And then also, like, speaking of lists, your bucket list is just like the completed items on that bucket list.
I haven't looked at the bucket list in a year. I need to re-up that.
Oh man, so it's even more than what's there now.
Yeah, I rode my bike across the country last year, and I basically did that because I foolishly put it on my bucket list. And somebody was like, "Hey, I see this is on your website."
Yeah, that one wasn't updated, so I knew you were doing that, and so
that one I need to update it. Sorry about that.
But yeah, the items on there, I mean, it reads like just doing a fraction of those items is amazing. So you've done so much cool stuff. We could talk about a million things, but I think given like the function of this podcast, the whole goal here is really to like help make nomadic travel more accessible. And so I figure we start with the topic of minimalism. And if you can just talk about, like, I know you did that project, the Extreme Minimalism project. What was that all about?
Yeah, I never really traveled until I was 22 or 23. I always thought it was for the rich. I always thought it was for the privileged, and that wasn't me. And so I started traveling a little bit for work, having started that movement that was in a bunch of countries. So people were inviting me and offering plane tickets. So I was like, oh wow, I could go to London now. I can go to Hamburg and all these places I'd only heard of or read of in books. And so at a certain point, life kind of hit me, and I kind of slightly broke my foot. Had a big stress fracture, and I was training for an Ironman at the time. I decided that my job wasn't for me, and my girlfriend decided that the relationship wasn't working out, and those all happened within like 48 hours. And so I kind of got all my friends together, all of my closest, lovely friends, and I said, "What should I do?" I'm thinking about starting another company. I'm thinking about moving to San Francisco. I'm thinking about, all these things. They all, 8 of 8, said, travel. You have to travel. And so I took that to heart and just started looking at it and kind of tooling around. And I'd saved up a couple $1,000s, and I was like, all right, I can take some time off. And but really one of the big things that was scary was the storage shed. And I don't know why that was such a big part of my trip, but the idea of storing all my stuff and paying $250 a month for that would like limit my trip by a lot and limit my flexibility. And so I got rid of my apartment, and I did so during a dinner party, and I kind of got everybody a little bit drunk, and I said, all right, everything you see here is for your taking. And so then I had, 30 of my closest friends just loot my apartment, which is pretty fun. Like there was people tackling everybody. Jeremy Tanner, one of our mutual friends, was there. He got the TV, I think.
So you didn't even sell this stuff. You just gave it away to the people.
I sold like the higher value stuff, but like most of the stuff was just like yard sale quality. So, and I probably got it from yard sales. So, we gifted it. All my friends were trying around my t-shirts, seeing which ones they wanted. And then I just kind of took off, and I followed an airline deal and ended up in Bogota, Colombia, and started out my adventure. But in doing so, and in doing it the way I did, I only owned my backpack. Like I didn't have anything else to my name. I only owned the few items in my backpack. And, when you start traveling, you kind of have this like massive, if you see travelers kind of at hostels and such, they have these like huge, 50-pound packs with another pack on front. They're just walking around, and that just looks miserable to me. I'd rather wear, the same 3 shirts over and over and over than I would carry a backpack. So I lucked out, and that my like quest for travel independence actually equaled just minimalism. And I only owned a pair of pants, a pair of shorts, a couple of shirts, a couple of pairs of underwear and socks, my laptop, my camera, my phone. Like I didn't have much. And at a certain point, I totaled it up. I did it for about a year, and nobody cared. Absolutely nobody cared. And then I did a radio interview with Dan from ABC Radio News, and then suddenly everybody was nitpicking and saying, "Oh, in this photo, I see you own 16 items. In this photo." So then everybody was really angry that I only owned 15 things when I really owned 18. Or, is my toothbrush and toothpaste, is that one item or is that 2? Like they really got into it, and I just like I didn't care. So like I cared that I got to do all these experiences by owning less.
Yeah,
and that was the reason of the project. And I wrote about it in the book. Like at a year into it, people were just like, "Yeah, you're really privileged with a credit card." And so I like hid my credit card and went homeless in Austin for a week, to experience what it would be like to not have that. I've got a backpack. Me and the guy begging on the street corner are pretty similar, so let me actually like dive into that and like discuss the idea of privilege and with myself and feel where I was comfortable.
Yeah. Well, and I remember reading at one point a post you had written that caught my eye that was about like surviving at like 35 cents a day or something on red beans, or it was some food that you could make very cheaply.
Yeah, I think it's one of my top blog posts of all time. It was how to live comfortably off $34 a month for food. And it was just kind of like, I just remember being in a grocery store, during college and being like, all right, I've got $20 cash. Let's make this work. For 2 weeks. And it was just like, man, this is tough. And like, I'm looking around and it's like, nobody's like me. Like, this is bad, but also like, oh, holy shit, I can go to this department. I can talk to this person. And like, it became a challenge. Then I was at lunch, later on in life where we dropped $34 for lunch. It was kind of like, all right, I've got to tell you this story about that was my food budget one month. And here's what I did. Actually pretty well. But you've got to experiment. You've got to take what you're given and see how you can thrive with that.
Yeah. Well, and that just seems like as long as I've known you, and I've known you for like 12 years now, you constantly challenge assumptions and push the boundaries and things like this, and like delve into, this is what I like, is that you'll delve into, well, what is homeless list? Like, let's go experiment with that and see what that's about. Rather than
what is art, what is culture, and what is travel, and what is, I define visiting a country. I've been to 80, but I only count countries where I've tried riding public transit and been into a grocery store. And I think if you've done those two things, you've kind of actually seen what real life is like.
Yeah.
But on the train through a country isn't visiting a country.
Yeah.
Although it is public transit, I guess. But, like there's all these discussions, and there's almost these holy discussions on travel. And it's just like, they're all meaningless. Because travel is just your intent. You can travel in your hometown this weekend. You don't have to have any money. You don't have to have any, privilege to be able to just say like, hey, I'm going to go out and explore a place that nobody goes and talk to the people that are there.
Yeah.
Right. Do something kind or do something with art and just experience it.
Well, and on that vein, so yesterday we were talking about like that rant, that when people say, oh, you're so lucky, I could never do this. What do you say to those people that are erecting kind of false barriers to doing it on their own? I feel like they could do it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We are very lucky. We get to choose our future. You get to choose that. I get to choose that as well. I have chosen a pretty optimistic view of that future. And also, like, I've met more dishwashers than I have lawyers on the road. Like, traveling in the coolest places in the world, you ask them where they're from and what they do, and there's the people that want to travel are the people that are traveling. It's not the people that are the most privileged that are traveling. Like I remember being on top of this like Machu Picchu style, lost city in Colombia, with a group of 6, and it was just nobody earned more than 20K a year. But here they all had this like unbelievable life experience of, seeing where the cocoa is grown and having push-up contests with Colombian soldiers with AK-15, AKs on their wrists while they're doing the push-ups. But you're having these amazing life experiences, and it only comes because they took a chance and they said, I want to do this.
Right.
If you want to go, like I think I spec'd out an international around the world 5-continent trip, and the airfare was under $2,500. Right. And if you have $2,500 on your wall that you're going to say, I'm going to earn $2,500 this year so I can buy this ticket. Right. You can probably do that. Right. If that's your goal, if you're, listening to podcasts, if you're, at a level where you're actually, able to kind of play around and hack, which not everybody is. So it is a very privileged thing. But yeah, it's a lot cheaper. Time is by far the most expensive thing, by far.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the lesson there is that people tend to, like, it's what you value at the end of the day, right? It's not the absolute dollar amounts we're talking about are not actually that high, but it's a matter of like squeezing it into your schedule. And I think too often the tendency is to like use the price as a justification for just not taking the leap.
Yeah. And if you only have a week around Christmas time to do an international trip, you're competing with everybody else that's a week for an international trip.
Right.
I would never travel internationally during Christmas time just because the prices are 4x for everything you do. And then you get this bad taste in your mouth to travel is just for the elite because you think that it's going to cost you $6,000 for that week trip to Lima, right? Which, is not the most expensive travel destination. And you can live for a year and do that if you want to. That's the other thing. It's like, I'm really a fan of budgets. And if you want to spend $2,000 and live an amazing 3 weeks in Hawaii, you can do that. But if you want to take that $2,000 and live for 7 weeks in North Africa, playing around, you can also do that, right? But like money, in many ways, a cup of coffee costs a cup of coffee, no matter where you go in the world. And it's just like, that's the price, and you've got a budget for it. And there's no competitive shopping, and there's no haggling that'll get, over that. It costs money to travel.
When you did this travel, how long were you gone for?
It's hard to say because I fell in love and I was in Switzerland for a while, and then I fell in love and I was in London for a while.
Yeah.
Is that travel at that point? Is that not? I was working for a while for a German company, but from the time I left Boulder to the time that I felt like I was home, probably 3.5 years.
Yeah. And you had to work for some of that period, and then it's some of those periods you went just kind of took off work and did your own thing, or what was
I think the first year I took off work. The second year I was working on random things, and the third year I was like back to being a professional.
Yeah. Cool.
So, and I saved up a ton of money, and actually in that third year saved up enough to get a down payment for a house. So because I was living in a foreign country, I had almost no day-to-day spend, staying in housing that the company provided. My food was super, super cheap. My cell phone bill was the only bill I had. And so I saved almost 100% of my paycheck for a year, and then I had a down payment. And then that changed my life in another chapter of it. So, but yeah.
And was this the trip during which you were writing the book, or is this a different?
Yeah. Yeah. It was a funny thing because I had a couple blog posts go viral, and it's a really fun experience to have, 1 million people read a post. And then I was like, wait, I made $0 off of that. So it's like I had the bright idea to write a book, because if they read a blog post, they're going to want to write more, which is probably the most non-true assumption I've ever made. But it was also like my mom really valued that I wrote down a lot of these stories. So I took her advice and I took a bunch of my friends' advice. And the plan was to take a week and put all these, posts that I'd written on travel together into a book. And then I realized that some were super strong and some were super weak. And then I'm like, wait, I'm writing about whimsy and travel and I'm back in Boulder. And so I bought a ticket to Australia so I could be writing the book on the road. And then I started traveling again.
Yeah.
But I finished that book, and it was great. I mean, it reached #1 for travel section. Had mentions from Seth Godin and that whole crew. So like it was an acclaimed book, and it met every single goal I had. But the experience of writing a book is why you should write a book. You should never write a book to try to be on a list or make money off of it, because you're going to be disappointed in what that means.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what I liked about it is it reminded me kind of like the Rolf Potts, the vagabonding book, in that it wasn't trying to convey so much like a Fodor's, reference guide, like this is how you do travel. It was more like this very Zen, like follow, like just, I don't know, kind of like follow these things and things like the
I think one of the chapters that I liked the most was, give yourself permission to be wrong. Like, why do we like travel? It's because we can be wrong. If I took the wrong turn on my way to work this morning, I'd be like pretty mad at myself.
Yeah.
Right. But if I took the wrong turn in Morocco, I'd be pretty ecstatic that I got to see this new view. Right. And so why we love travel just because we can be wrong. And so there's so much pressure on this like perfect picturesque Instagram, selfie travel, when really it's like, those aren't the moments that those are the most boring moments when it's the most beautiful. The real, like when the storm comes in, that's when it's beautiful. And when things, I don't know if I ever discussed this with you, but the idea of lucid travel, you heard of that?
Mm.
So it's this idea you're in this situation where you can't tell if you're dreaming or not. And like a lot of people, like that's the highest form of travel for them. That they come around this corner and they see this site and they just can't imagine that this exists. And they have to pinch themselves because the smell, this sight, this feeling is so foreign to anything they've ever experienced that they have to like check that it's actually real.
Yeah.
And you get that. And if you're a new traveler, you get that a lot. And if you're an experienced traveler, it's few and far between. But man, when that hits, it's the most beautiful, euphoric feeling in the world.
I think it sounds a lot what I call parallax, which is in the sense of travel. To me, it's like we go to the other side of the world because from this one viewpoint that we're used to, we don't even know what we don't know. We don't know that like toilets flush differently, or that there's different, just things work differently. Transit works differently. Things that we just don't even think are different. And until you go to enough places, you don't know what you don't know there.
I love going to a sporting event in a foreign country, because you put on the cap or, put on your shirt because, you've done your homework and you're going to go support the local team. And you're like, how do I get there? And you just walk out of wherever you're at and you look around. And you're like, there's another baseball cap. Or there's another jersey. I'm going to follow them. Like, oh, sweet. They're getting on the subway. I'm going to do that too. Almost foolproof. You never need to figure out how to go to the game because people will guide you. And then you're like, all right, what do I do in my life that's similar to that? Where I'm not actually wearing a visible jersey, but I'm like just following what the crowd is doing.
Right. Signaling. Well, and that topic too, this technique you wrote about in the book called Mark Sue, which I've actually used, and it's creepy when you think about it, but it's actually a really cool way to see a city. Like, can you explain what that was? Or
yeah, I started doing this game called Mark Sue, and I was kind of tired of this idea of authentic travel. Like a lot of people have this, like, you need to live like the locals. And then you like eat at expensive restaurants that you'd only eat at on a holiday. It never really connected. And I really liked walking around cities. I really liked. And I one day, I don't remember where it was. I don't remember why it happened, but I just started I looked at somebody and I started following them. And again, it sounds creepy, but I just started following. They're just like walking at the pace they were walking, going in the direction they were going. And at any time that I got too close or felt uncomfortable, I'd pick somebody else to follow. But that allowed me to actually see these stairwells and see these places that, I just didn't know about or weren't on any maps or Google Maps wasn't going to show me. But the idea of like having a local kind of give you an unauthorized tour, of like you're walking the speed they're walking. And in New York, you're going to walk fast, right? And you might hop on a crosstown bus and you might go in the subway and you might do whatever. But it's just like unauthorized tour guide. And it's called Mark Sue because I felt like if I ever got confronted, like I thought it was super creepy to be doing. And so if they turn around and be like, are you following me? I always in my mind had a story that like, hey, are you my friend Mark? Are you my friend Sue? And then I could instantly get out of that situation of just being like, oh no, I thought you were my friend. And so I've done it in countless countries. It's always fun just to kind of put yourself in the shoes and just start imagining, like, and really looking at it as somebody that lives there looks at it.
Yeah, we got to do, so as you know, I did remote year for a year. And so we had ample opportunity in every town to really kind of dig in and feel like get the ways of the local. But I just feel like that technique, if you only have a few days in a spot, that seems like a hyper effective way to like parachute in and like as much as you can try to get the local vibe versus just going to all the touristy spots and whatnot.
Exactly. And we're tourists, right? There's no amount of learning a language. And my friend lives in Kyoto, and she says that to be a local, you need to be there 3 generations, right? It's like we're tourists. We're gonna be tourists, So like empathizing with how the local standards are, without trying to be a colonizer, like how do you just tap in and just see the beauty that people see? And that's kind of what you're trying to do every time you visit someplace. And it's wonderful to go to the tourist spots and take the selfies, but it's also wonderful to like listen to the people working there and empathize with what they're doing and realize how tough or happy they are. Like how are their jobs? How are their families? Like some places you'll go and everybody's just going to be arguing about their family in public, loudly. And it's awesome. And you go to other places and they're not talking about their families at all. They're talking about their dreams and their hopes and their ambitions and their, Singapore versus Colombia, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and we were in Valencia when Trump won. And so as you can imagine, like for the rest of the trip, that was pretty much just questions from everyone. Like, who is this guy? Like, I can't believe you elected him.
And quickly, I first started traveling kind of during W. Bush, and that, you put a lot of people would put the Canadian flag on their backpack and just wouldn't want to talk about it. But then you quickly figure out that like, you're not your government. And like, nobody really expects you to be your government. And for you to be like, yeah, I don't agree with that policy. Like you've watched almost all of that really awkward conversation. But yeah, I remember traveling abroad when Obama won and people wanted to almost like take a selfie with you because they were so proud of Obama.
Yeah.
America just taking such a huge step forward of electing an ethical, wonderful person.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you this. How did you plan that route? Like, I don't know if you encountered this, but when I finished remote year, we had our like whole itinerary mapped out. And then when we got to the end of it, I kept solo traveling, but I kind of like came to this realization, like I could literally go anywhere in the world right now. Like there is any direction, any country, I could go anywhere. Like, how do you map it out? It's paralyzing almost.
You can go anywhere in the world for less than a mortgage payment too. Right? Like that's the thing that's so mind-boggling to so many people is like, you just get to pick what type of style of life. Now I have a mortgage payment right now. So, those plane tickets are fewer in between. But you've got to figure out opportunities. I'm a big fan of the kind of lead blocker travel. So you find somebody else, like if you were to be like, hey, I've got an extra ticket to a World Cup match. You've got to get yourself to Moscow. I'd probably get to Moscow. But I'm not going to be the one that's like looking for World Cup tickets and seeing if somebody else, see if I can do the hoteling and such. There's times where I'll do that, but then there's times where it's like, how do I take in that opportunity, and like that's travel, and that could be going to the lake, and that could be going, on a 5-country motorcycle trip, but like look for people that are leading and follow them.
Yeah.
Turn that off. And that's a big lesson to learn in travel is that some people are really gonna champion you. And if somebody's, you've got to give just as much back. If you're crashing on a couch, you should be spending, if you've got the money, you should be spending as much as a hotel on them. Take them out to dinner. Take them, you are saving money by staying with them, but you need to be giving back. And you need to be, enhancing your life and theirs by doing that. You're going to be doing something together. So how can you be generous to them? And that might be doing the planning. That might be creating that experience or doing that extra work. When you're first in a city, I know you know this from remote year, you have that like energy. You know, you're like, you want to meet people and you want, you know, like I've lived in Boulder for 14 years. I don't want to meet new people, right? I would love to just have extra time to hang out with my friends that I don't get to hang out with, you know? And so like when you're new to a city and when you're like, where should I go? You can go on Instagram and kind of fall into the trap of what's beautiful, or you can listen to your friends and just be like, what are the opportunities? And somebody's gonna be like, I'm building a cabin in Alaska. Can you help? Yeah, I'm game. That's gonna be new and different and challenging, and like, let's do it. You know, like those are for me, that's the most valuable travel experience.
Yeah. What do you, when you get to a new city that you've never been to before, do you have like a pattern or a ritual or anything that you do as a way to kind of like deconstruct or explore the city? Or
yeah, I mean, one thing that I always do at the airport is I get some cash from the ATM. And I really haven't been to a country in a long time that hasn't had an ATM. And then I go to the local, you know, overpriced bullshit shop and I buy something small. And I break down one of those big bills into all the bills. I need to look at the currency. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, all right, so there's coins, there's small bills, there's large bills. A cup of coffee equals 2 of these coins. Okay, cool. I kind of have the lay of the land now. And so if I take a taxi, if they don't have, I mean, Uber and cell phone service has just changed everything. So when I first started traveling, like, I would never have a cell phone that worked because it was just too damn expensive. Uber wasn't a thing. ATM cards internationally weren't really working too reliably as well. Like my first couple trips, you had to carry cashier's checks. That was a nightmare. But now it's like, if there's Uber, like I went to Moscow 2 years ago and like Uber works there. And so like we're researching things and like, all right, sweet. And then we have like a car come. We don't speak a word of shared language. And we get to our destination, you know, perfectly. And like, it's just this amazing thing that like sometimes technology works. Oh, and T-Mobile is free in, you know, 85 countries or whatever. So I land and my cell phone works. I can text my girlfriend and I can text, you know, my family and not feel disconnected and really research things. I really value museums when I travel. I think the kind of culture around the museum is actually really, really an interesting thing to tap into. And I value having like 1 or 2 things that are kind of uncomfortable that you do, whether that be an Airbnb experience or just like hanging out like in the hotel or hostel lobby and just seeing, you know, what else is going on. But having a couple extra days is always pretty important as well. If you can, you know, like if I go somewhere, I speak a lot, and so they'll fly me in and I'll try to pad it a couple of days. So let me hang out in Brisbane for 2 extra days. And, you know, doing that, oh, there's Amanda Palmer's playing here tonight. And oh my goodness, I just saw on Twitter that she's an American flag. You know, it's like, all right, we've got a mission now. And like, we've got all these people involved and we've got this amazing experience that came out of just like being open to it.
Yeah. So it's like you bake in some wiggle room almost so that you can have that play. If you book flights back to back and there's no wiggle room, then it's like no opportunity for that kind of serendipity.
And you also have to be a little creative, you know, with customs agents. You know, like if I buy a one-way ticket in, oh geez, you know, like they can deny my entry to London if I don't have an exit ticket booked. They don't say, can you go over there and book it? They say you need to go back to the country you came from and book it. You know, like so you can really like that short-term travel, you know, like that whimsy travel, like and my you know, book a Southwest ticket for in the future and just be like, I'm going to a wedding. I have to be back for this flight. Like I don't have this flight booked, or take a screenshot of a couple options and just say like, hey, you know, my credit card was, you know, wasn't working. My friend's booking this. You know, I've got these other credit cards. They love seeing 6 credit cards. But there's all these little tricks like that you just kind of learn, you know, how custom agents work and how to get through countries and how to be respectful. You know, it's not how you are tricking them. It's how to be respectful in a way that you're showing them that you're going to be a good citizen. You're not showing them that I'm smarter than you, whatever, which I think it's that same advice can come off that way.
Yeah. I had a situation in Chile. There was actually a service that I tried that was, you basically could rent a ticket to use as exit confirmation. Right. And for whatever reason, it didn't come in time. So I didn't have exit confirmation. I was flying from Santiago to Costa Rica, and the guy insisted on exit confirmation. I went and, okay, I bought a bus ticket out of Costa Rica to Nicaragua, came back, and the guy said, no, it's got to be a plane ticket. And then, okay, fine. So I went and bought a plane ticket, showed him my phone. He's like, no, it's got to be printed. And so I was like, fuck, I'm like, you know, like almost about to miss my flight now, racing around. And freaking find a printer, get it printed, and then come in and he's like, oh, I need your yellow fever proof of, your card that proves you got the yellow fever shot. Unfortunately, I had it, but I think once you get sideways with a customs agent, so they can, they just kind of like keep going and keep needling you.
Yeah. And they're used to a lot of bad behavior, right? And so you have to be really great behavior.
Yeah.
And there's really silly reasons. Like I'm speaking at a conference in London and they ask, like, do they pay for your ticket? It's like, if I say yes to this, I'm lying. Or, if I say no to this, I'm lying. But if I say yes to this, you're not going to let me in because I don't have the right visa. Mm-hmm. So what do you do? And it's like, well, they kind of paid for some of my ticket and they kind of did that. So, honesty is generally the best policy on it. But yeah, it's just like, it's so silly to be like, I'm here for 3 days. I'm just bringing money to your country. I'm not going to stay. I'm not going to marry somebody. I'm not going to use your social services. I'm just going to be here for this one conference that I'm doing my buddy a favor for being at. It's like,
yeah,
it's tricky.
Can you talk about, there was one story in the book, I don't know if you're able to talk about this, but the Nepal incident.
Yeah.
What,
yeah. I went to
I was just going to preface this by, I went to school in Texas. I had classmates who never left Texas, let alone the USA. So you've been banned from more countries than some of my classmates have visited.
Yeah. So I went to Nepal in January, which I think, I was in Colombia and where was I? I think I was in Colombia at that point, and I just wasn't having a good time. And so I wrote some of my friends that were like, you should go travel. And I was like, I'm just not having a good time. I'm getting sick a lot. I'm not meeting people. I'm just like not in a good space. And so I said, just go where you want to go. Like just pick the dot on the map where you want to go and go there. So I found a cheap ticket to Nepal. And I didn't really think about it, but I went trekking in the Northern Hemisphere in January. So I did that kind of Everest Base Camp Annapurna circuit. And I wasn't really thinking about it, but I took pictures of, the roads being built. And I was the only American to be on the Annapurna circuit in January that year. At the end of it, you kind of have this guidebook, and assuming everybody signed it, I was the only American that did it. And so you saw it during off-peak in Annapurna circuit. It's something that everybody does in the fall and spring. And it's just like, it's amazing. The views, the people, it's just an amazing thing to be able to experience. But I was experiencing January where I saw a lot of child labor building the roads the tourists walk on. And I took pictures of that. And I published it kind of on Flickr and just didn't really think much of it. Because to me, it was the scene of this road being built. But then you kind of look and you're like, wow, there's kids with dynamite. Like, that's not awesome. And like, I'm paying for those kids with dynamite with my entry fee. And then I did a little more digging because you're sharing a hotel with the people that are the Department of Tourism, ministries of infrastructure. And it's like, wow, like the tourist entry fees actually pay for the cities to build these roads that they make children do. And it's like, damn, I'm paying for child labor to do some like super violent, terrible things, unsafe. I'm sure they're getting injured. And it's like, it's negative. Like it got as cold as -40 while I was hiking. And it was just like, I didn't like it. So I wrote about it and the blog post kind of went viral and the photos kind of went viral. And then I got some phone calls and emails from, the Nepalese State Department saying, yeah, it's a good idea if you don't come back here. And I got some calls from, National Geographic photographers that are like, I hope you're out of the country. Like, I hope you're not that stupid. And I, luckily enough, was out of the country when I published that. I didn't really think it was going to be a big thing. I thought it was just like me and my kind of bullshit travel blog. It wasn't like an international incident I was trying to create. So, that post really got a lot of people to think about, how are things built, and are you comfortable with that? And are you comfortable with like directly knowing that you're causing kids to work? And it caught a lot of people off guard because Nepal is supposed to be this like amazing, amazing country of just everybody that goes there just has nothing but good things to say. Then when you get there, you got a lot of people that are like, I thought everybody that went here before me said that, but I don't feel that way. I feel a little dirty. I feel a little like there's this conflict, but I've worked so hard. I worked 2 years and I took this time off and I don't have any other time off. And like, I'm going to come back and I can't say like, this was conflicted. I'm going to come back and I'll be like, check out this mountain, check out base camp, check out this things, and like this amazing, experience that you had if you just look at the high points. And then they just kind of found out that their friends didn't want to hear about the low points. And so I wrote about it honestly, and I think I was at the time, one of the only people that had come out with such a really strongly worded, I was angry. I was really angry that these ethics were some things that nobody had really challenged me with before. So yeah, I got banned.
Well, I mean, first off, kudos for just being like brutally honest and like writing about not just the pretty glossy photos, but like the underbelly of it. I feel like now more than ever, Instagram and like just short form, everything is so bite-sized and glossy and filtered, and it's like all made to look amazing.
Totally.
There's not as many people taking that honest, hard look and writing, from the heart about, hey, this is like makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, do you think it's just like there's very few people that are actually providing editorial, right? Because like there's thousands of people that experience what I experienced, right? But like, is it their job to be editors? Is it their job to be like let's think about this as society goes?
I wouldn't say it's their job, but I guess it doesn't matter what I want, but I would love it if more people would introspect and do it in a blog format. Like, I feel like we've to some extent lost the long form writing of blogs. Like Twitter and Instagram have kind of displaced all of the long form blog writing, myself being guilty. But
Me too. Yeah, I've written 2 posts this year. I used to write 1 a day.
Yeah.
So it's kind of.
Speaking of Twitter, you have a huge presence on Twitter. You have like 24,000-ish people following you. Like, what do you get from Twitter? How do you use it as a tool, or is it just like a thing?
I mean, I'm lucky, and Twitter has provided me so much. It's a weird thing to say, but I can almost go to any country in the world and hop on Twitter and say, hey, I'm in Ulaanbaatar, anybody around? And then there'll be people around, because I did found that conference that went everywhere. So for me, it's just like, it's the best intro tool ever, because it's just like, hey, this guy from out of town that you might like is going to be in town. It's tough when you're always on the road. It's hard keeping in contact and feeling like you still have your friends. And for Twitter, like for me, Twitter is like the best way to really keep in contact with them. You and Jeremy and Strebel and like all these like people that we don't see each other, but once every couple of years now. I still feel like I know you pretty damn well. And I still feel like I got to go on a remote year with you. And so if you follow right people and you kind of treat it as this like somewhat sarcastic, I follow a lot of very dark humor accounts, and it kind of keeps me in check and keeps me chuckling. And then I follow a lot of news accounts, which is very much dark humor these days, which keeps me just kind of scared and chuckling.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, Twitter, I got my username to be something pretty unique, because I'm just at unicorn. And I think I actually have you to kind of somewhat thank for that. Weren't you in the room for that?
Well, yeah, that's a whole story into itself. It was,
we'll get to that another day. If you want to say hi, if you wanted some travel advice, but yeah, this year I've been to 7 countries or so, 7 or 8 countries. And you change your experience. Like this year, I went to Buenos Aires, and unfortunately my dog was really, really sick. And I spent 34 hours in Argentina. I spent more time on the plane getting there than I did, but I went to a conference, I spoke at a conference, and usually I would spend a week or 2 there, and I didn't. I got home to be with my girlfriend. I got home to be supportive. So sometimes travel is, not what you expect.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, again, sorry to hear about Dylan.
My poor Muppet of a dog passed away, which was tough, because you go from travel where you have nothing permanent. After a couple of years, you become obsessed with refrigerators because you don't know what cold food is. Because you just don't ever have a refrigerator. You don't have leftovers. Like, this is a big deal. And then I went this last year, and I have an amazing relationship, and we had an amazing dog, and he passed away a couple weeks ago. But yeah, it's just like a different part of life. How do you challenge that assumption? How do you know what you really want and need? And we're going to the mountains this weekend to have, a great conversation as a couple as far as what we want to do next. And it's a very fun one, because there's nothing that's out. I have no fear at all about her saying, I want to live in Shanghai, or I want to live, I have no fear, because I know everything's going to be challenged. I know everything's going to be a place for growth, a place to give back, a place to experience. And so if she says, I want to buy a farm and, become subsistence lifestyle, it's like, well, game on, let's do it. Like, at a certain point, no situation can phase you once you experience.
Is nomadic travel in the hat for something that you guys might consider, or are you looking more to be planted? Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, anything. There's another great travel writer. I'm not even trying to say his name. Tynan. He's got a couple great books, just kind of in that Rolf Potts style. But he bought an island with a couple friends in Nova Scotia, and just like goes to his island every once in a while to like be relaxed. And there's no electricity and there's no infrastructure that I know of, but like that's something he did. It's like sweet. You just dream more. And you like Chelsea Runstrom, one of my friends, found out that Italy's got this like old building clause where if you like will help renovate something, they'll give you an old building. So there's all these train stations and castles up for grabs. And so she just got a monastery, her and a couple friends. And it's like, who wants to help me fix up a monastery? Right? And it's like there's all these things like that. They're just like I never could have dreamed. Like that's like kind of that lucid travel thing. I never dreamed that was a possibility, that one of my friends would have a monastery that they're redoing. And am I going to show up for a month with a hammer? Probably. I would love to do that and help out and just be a part of that. So, yeah.
Here's a question for you. So you've been to 80 countries, you got 20 more to go to hit the triple digits. Do you have target, like I know you'd love to get led if there's like a speaking opportunity or something cool going on, then that's like the magnet that draws you there. What are the countries that you're targeting next? Like if there was something cool going on in X country, where would you like to go?
Yeah, I would love to do a cross-continent Africa motor tour. I think that's one of my big things. That I'm just waiting for the right experience, but like a South Africa to Egypt moto tour, I think would be really, really fun.
Wow.
My friend Anna did a monkey bike race in Morocco where they kind of gave you a really shitty bike and made sure it was broken and dropped you off in the middle of nowhere with no money. Just as far as an experience to have. I think I'm looking at airlines that I like and that I have status on, and I haven't been to Belize yet. And that's a direct flight from Denver, so I should probably do that for a weekend. That should be a date weekend. But then going to Zimbabwe and being on a motorcycle, probably not something that my girlfriend would particularly enjoy. So you've got to balance it out. You've got to look at opportunities where you're invited to speak. I'm very lucky in that. I'm going to Australia. Melbourne is my favorite city in the world, outside of Boulder. And so I'm going back there. I'm really excited about that. But, like from there, do I try to make a stopover, in Bali or in, these places I haven't been there on the way. It's a 5-hour flight, but it's also saves me a 14-hour flight, so.
Right.
At what point do you get creative? And at what point do you just say, like, I'm happy to be here. I don't need to go to another country ever again. I'm happy to be in a relationship. I'm happy to have quality work. I'm happy to give back in my different ways. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you have that attitude regardless, almost like very just zen wherever you're at, but like open to possibilities. So if there's a conference organizer in Zimbabwe or Bali, anywhere on that route to Egypt, who would like a speaker on sustainability or minimalism or any of these things.
I mean, blockchain's the new thing, so that's what most of the conferences are doing.
Let's talk. Actually, why don't you mention what you're doing with Origin Protocol?
Yeah, so we're for a company called Origin Protocol. The second employee, we're up to 10 now. We do protocols for the sharing economy. So if you think about Airbnb and like the technical background of it, we're doing all of that open source, free to use on blockchain. And so if you think about email, you use SMTP every day. You don't really think about it. It's an open source protocol that runs on a server somewhere, but to make sure your email is delivered and received. So we're making those protocols for ratings, reviews, booking, listing, trust, identity, all those little things that make it so that if you wanted to open up an Airbnb competitor, but be paid in crypto, you could. So we're just writing the protocols that we're not really launching the Uber Airbnb clones, but we're letting people do that. How do you live in the new world of fractional ownership and cryptocurrency, and be able to roll out a program that works in Portugal as same as it does in Colorado, as same as it does in Calgary.
And the goal there is to really like disintermediate, to take out, Airbnb takes a 30% cut or something. So you're basically trying to level that and make it very much like almost like a co-op, like managed by people, really.
I mean, you don't pay for your email because somebody wrote an open source protocol that just works.
Right.
And so can you have it so that you trust somebody? I mean, I don't know if you've used Facebook marketplaces, but like suddenly I trust, people that I wouldn't have trusted on Craigslist. It's like, oh, we have 4 mutual friends. I don't think you're going to, like that's enough of a little thing that I won't think I'm going to get robbed when I go meet you. So can we do that for, your vacations? For if you rent a car, can you rent a car from somebody that lives there? Can you rent a room from somebody that lives in a place you want to visit? And can you do so giving them 100% of the cut? I think that's really the challenge.
And then you're basically, though, then pushing the business model. The business model is up to the person rendering that service at that point. Yeah.
Yep. And so the business model is not, it could be that the business model is that there isn't a marketplace. It's just one house, right? Like if you want to rent my house in Boulder, you can go to my website and then book it from there. Or if you want to be the kind of Boulder rentals, you want to be the hospitality person, you're going to take 5%, but you're going to provide the most amazing hospitality they've ever seen. That's awesome. I think that's a great business plan and model.
Yeah. And and what was the outcome? You guys just had your funding, your coin list thing, right?
Yeah. We have currently, that's going on. By the time this is published, it's probably over. But yeah, we raised a strategic sale, kind of a founding sale, and then now we've got our coin list sale. So team of 10, we've got some money in the bank and we're ready to run. So nice. We're building some amazing open source software. And it's just originprotocol.com. But yeah, it's super fun just to kind of, how do we take open source software and try to unseat billion-dollar companies? We've got monopolies and they're going to charge as much as they can until there's a factor in which they're like, hey, actually, we think 12% is really valid. We think 4% is really valid. Like until they have somebody come along and just say, hey, we think 0% is valid.
I love it.
Right? I think code can replicate what you're doing. So let's just do that. We'll see. It's a grand experiment.
Yeah. I mean, all the blockchain stuff, like I'm just waiting for the day that insurance and, lending and some of these things that are just absolute rackets, just raking people over the coals until they get displaced. And now it's like what you guys are doing.
I think it'll be replaced with jobs that people want. I think I think entrepreneurship is truly the global language. And I think that, hospitality is something that, every country experiences in some way. Like I really think the US should have a Department of Hospitality, and that should replace our border force, right? We should just treat it as hospitality. Your first touch to our country should be a pleasant one. Now, you just got off a really long flight. We understand that. Let's make sure you have some snacks and some water and somebody to talk to if you're really having a bad day, or if you're really scared of this thing, and if you filled out this one form. Like, why isn't that a hospitality job? I've never really understood that, which I understand why, but I also have this romantic view of how the world can work. And so let's replicate and dream a little bit more about what type of jobs people want to have. Right. And dealing with people at the border when they're they fill out their own paperwork and aren't listening to you, it's got to be one of the worst jobs in the world. But greeting people on vacation, it's got to be one of the best jobs in the world. Seeing people on their best. Oh, how awesome would that be? Every day you just get to say welcome, and you get to say
yeah.
So how can we create more of those jobs? It's kind of how I see the future of decentralization going, as people are going to really empower themselves to figure out what they want to do and find out that there's a business model there.
There's a reason that you run the community for Origin Protocol, I can tell you. You're able to paint this awesome vision. It's so cool.
It's fun.
I'm just gonna get super Tim Ferriss-y and tactical here and ask you a few more questions.
Right.
Coming up on an hour here. Is there anything you read regularly, like any particular site you go to, or blog or podcast or anything that is a habit that you have?
I wish I did more, but right now Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah.
And the rabbit hole I get from that. But I think a lot of the people I follow on Twitter are really teaching me a lot right now. I follow a lot of people that are Native American or native to their country talking about social justice. Like that's a much more powerful voice than New York Times for me.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I can link to your followers who you follow.
That's a good idea.
link to your Twitter account. People can figure it out. What about last amazing book you read? Anything good?
Yeah. I always say Monkey Wrench Gang by Edward Abbey. It was kind of written in a little bit more of a rough time, where their nuance wasn't needed. Like a lot of the 80s films are just like unwatchable now after Me Too. Like you're like, wow, that joke is not funny at all. But Monkey Wrench Gang is one of my favorite kind of adventure Southwest, take Mother Nature back for herself. Fans of the book started Earth First, kind of accidentally. So it's one of those books that's a little uncomfortable, but it's all about adventure and kind of ethics and global responsibility.
Cool. I've never heard of that one. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
And then I guess last one here, what is there any apps or anything that you like, travel hacks or anything that you use on the road consistently that, gets you cheaper, faster, better?
Man, there's a couple WhatsApp groups that I'm on that are just like the people are insanely talented and interesting. So I don't know how I got on one of these ones that I'm on, but there's 25 people that travel all the time, and we're just very bluntly honest about what we're doing. And that's been one of the most amazing things. And everyone in that group is also saying like, this is the best thing on my phone right now. It's just that these people, and like everyone's always doing something just ridiculous, like buying an island or flying somewhere for the weekend. There's that. I really liked. There's a lot of apps that just kind of have this amazing promise, but then just couldn't find a business model and kind of went away. So there's old school, 10 years ago, Bright Kite, 5 years ago, Turf, is this geography wars type of thing. These location-based games that I just loved. I'm like quickly looking at my phone because I'm like, wow, I'm really boring right now. 1 second every day, if you don't use that, is a great app. You should absolutely use that. And Caesar's one of my favorite entrepreneurs out there. But make sure you're just a member of groups. I'm a member of 20 or 30 Slack groups that really don't have a stated purpose, or like I'm not going to get anything out of them, but I get to like see my friends flourish. I get to see my friends develop. So I love being on Slack and WhatsApp groups that are just like people just trying to poke and figure things out. And, how do you participate in a better way? And I try to go back to that a lot. It's how do you participate in a better way? Burning Man ethics, as far as there's no participant there, or there's no voyeur, there's only participation.
Yeah. That's an awesome mentality.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I will let you go. How do people connect? Or they can get your book on Amazon, right? It's still up there.
Yep. Books on Amazon. I have a nonprofit called glider.com, where you run a lot of education events, mostly in Colorado. We're still figuring out how to do fundraising for that. So if anybody wants to help me tinker around on how to create really quality decks and fundraising mechanisms, we're pretty much brand new, but we've run events for 10 years as a for-profit. Now we're a nonprofit. But that's Andrew at glider.com is that. And then Origin Protocol is kind of day job. And then, getting to travel all the time and meet amazing people like you is the dream. So it's really been wonderful to chat with you, man. Yeah,
same to you. Any final thoughts for that person who's sitting there that's like, I can't do this. It's just not, I don't think travel is in my future.
I didn't travel till I was 22. I didn't leave the country, right? Because I thought it wasn't for me. And so challenge that assumption. If you really think that it's not for you, challenge why. And if it's money, you're wrong. If it's ability, you're wrong. Like you're probably just, you're trying to figure out what's right for you. And like be okay with just like buying a ticket and finding a cheap Airbnb and just hanging out and having a journal and just discovering a little bit more of yourself for a week. But don't think it's not for you. Just try to figure out how to make it for you. And don't be afraid. Live fearlessly.
Love it.
Is that cool?
All right. Andrew, thank you so much, man.
Dude, thank you.
All right. Be well.
See ya.
Okay, that was my conversation with Andrew Hyde. If you have a question for Andrew, you can leave a written comment on Nomad Podcast underneath his episode. And you can also now record a quick video question using your webcam. So if you would like to be the first to know about when the next podcast episode is live, go to nomadpodcast.com, and in the footer, you can add your email address, and I will send you an email when I publish the next one. Nomad Podcast is supported in part by Nomad Prep, an online academy for aspiring digital nomads that puts your preparation efforts on rails. Get the first 4 days of this 2-week course completely free by going to nomadprep.com/podcast. Nomad Prep, take your job on the road and take on the world. Coming up next episode, we'll be talking to Matt Dunsmore of Start With Why about their method for discovering your why and unlocking your full potential so you can more fully express your natural talents. Until next time, it's a big world out there. Get out there and explore it. I'll see you on the road.
Nomad.